This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, Old Gingerface, here with you as always, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the Sergeant Steve YouTube channel watchers that are now over here being viewers and also watchers on the YouTube channel. YouTube channel's got a nice bump from starting that other channel. Love to see you guys here, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you to the new Patreon supporters who are choosing a level over on Patreon and getting a shout out. Sergeant or above gets a shout out, keeps the boat afloat, keeps the lights on, helps me pay the bills. I truly appreciate that. Thank you. Today's episode is a much requested but seldom executed episode. In the past, I have had on a fair amount of coppers from other countries. This gentleman has actually done both. He's done investigations in both in England and also in the U.S. He's a retired British homicide detective, served 32 years for the Queen before becoming detective superintendent in the Turks and Caicos Islands. He then immigrated to Virginia, where he became the most experienced capital defense investigator. He finished his career as a consultant to the U.S. military investigating Guantanamo Bay. Woo! Got to get this out of my mouth. And other terrorist cases. He has written 4 books, which he calls the Plod series. Without further ado, let me bring on the great Bob Lessemun. Bob!
Pleased to meet you. Yeah, good.
Great to have you, man. Bob the Bobby, right? That's what you got all the time, probably.
Yeah, I got it a lot of times, yeah. And as I say, probably a lot of other names as well.
If you're doing your job, then you certainly did.
Yeah.
So you started your police career in England.
Yes, I did, in 1967.
Okay. Wow. So the question, like, if you were just asking me, like, if I could get an English policeman on here and ask him one question that I've always been curious about is, what is Scotland Yard and why is it called Scotland Yard? Is that the Detective Bureau? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, Scotland Yard is the headquarters of the London Metropolitan Police. And they got a good name, particularly in homicide investigations, because they had a system. And once upon a time, the provinces used to use Scotland Yard for their system, not necessarily their detectives, but their system. And they had a system of investigation, particularly murder. And they used to send out senior police officers, but in the end, the senior police officers didn't. It was taken over by computers and the system involved there. But Scotland Yard remained. In fact, one of the things that I did when I became an investigator in the USA was say Scotland Yard trained, because I was trained as a hostage and kidnap negotiator, and saying that you're Scotland Yard trained opened a few doors for me, and so I used it, and it was true that they did train me to become a hostage negotiator.
That's great. Yeah, why wouldn't you? Yeah, I mean, we're watching a show right now called Young Sherlock. It's all British actors about Sherlock Holmes when he was younger. My family loves it, so do I. But that's like one of the scenes was like, oh, the investigators are here from Scotland Yard. It's like, man, Scotland Yard, that's like the big time.
Well, they got a good reputation, and they've earned that reputation because over the years that they have solved some really, really classic cases. But us from the provinces, we tend to think, well, we're just as good.
Yeah, of course.
We could do it. All we need is their system. And it is a good system. The computerized system now works pretty damn good. The only thing is when you've got a computerized system, you have a habit of thinking that somewhere the name's going to come up on the screen. No, it won't. You still got to do the piecework that's needed to get where you want to go.
Right. So why would they name it Scotland Yard and not England Yard?
Well, Scotland Yard is where it was. It's Scotland Yard in the middle of London, and it used to be Old Scotland Yard, and then they built a new multi-story building. It is now known as New Scotland Yard.
Okay, kind of like how the FBI is like Quantico. They call it Quantico.
Yeah, Quantico. Yeah, I've been to Quantico. Yeah.
Very interesting. I obviously did no research because I wanted to hear you tell me. I could have
All right.
Googled it, I guess.
Yeah.
Bob, can you take us back to when you were a young Bobby on patrol, like the first call or thing you dealt with that like gave you an adrenaline dump?
An adrenaline dump, I don't know. But the story that I want to tell is I was on duty in Starbridge. Starbridge is part of the Black Country, which is the Industrial Revolution. And it's a very, very busy place. I got a call to operate with a guy called PC Gittins, and PC Gittins had a bit of a reputation for nicking anybody and everybody who moved. And that wasn't really what they trained us to do. They trained us to operate with a little bit of fair play. But we're walking down a high street, and there's a guy with a little moped, a small motor scooter, and his brake cable was tied to the handlebar. And Gittins says to me, he says, "We got him. No brakes." I said, "Wait a minute. He's in Alfred. He's in the shop here. He's buying a new cable. Look, you can see he's buying a new cable." He said, "He won't put it on. He'll come on, get on it." And he said, "We'll have him." And I said, "Come on." I said, "Gittins." He said, "Hey, you do as you're told. You're the new recruit. And I'll teach you good habits. We'll have him. You go up the road. I'll go down the road. Whichever way he comes, we'll have him. Okay." And I said, anyway, I had to do as I'm told. He was my, what they call parent constable. He was the one who was looking after me. And I've got to be honest. I've got to be frank. I crossed my fingers, and I hoped that when he got on the moped, that he drove the other way. I thought, what if he drove the other way? I've got to nick him. But, you know, things being what they are, that's what happens. And he gets on his motorbike. Which way does he come? He comes direct for me. Oh, thinking, oh dear. And they taught us to step into the road, one step into the road, left hand in the air, and that's the stop sign. And so he's coming towards me, and I've got no choice. Puts me foot in the road, and I must admit, I closed my eyes. And I put my hand up. And then I opened my eyes, expecting him to be there. And he was there. He'd gone. And I looked round, and he's turning the corner, and he says, "Can't stop, copper. I got no brakes." And off he went. And so I didn't really get the first nick in, but Mr. Gittins gave me hell for not nicking him. And I said, "I can't, what do you want to do? Push him off his bike?" He couldn't, you know.
He probably would have tackled him off the bike.
Yeah, carved out. But that was...
what was wrong with his bike, Bob?
No brakes.
No, but you said like the infraction you were going to get him for. I didn't understand what the infraction was.
Riding a motorbike without any brakes. That's a crime. So he would have been nicked for that.
Oh, so he knew that. Gotcha.
Yeah, and he knew he was going to get nicked. And Gittins wanted me to nick him, but I was quite pleased he got away with it. But I didn't want to say that to Gittins because he was so upset. But so if you want do you want my first arrest? Is that
sure?
That
yeah.
Okay. Well, my first arrest was Christmas Eve, and back in 1967, and I got a call. I was on duty, and there's a town of about 60,000 people, and I was the only officer on duty. The other officer was in a patrol car. He was in a patrol car, but he was in a fatal road accident, and he was tied up. There was no way that he could assist me in any way. And I got a call on our new Pi radios. We kept these hand radios, one in your pocket and one on your thing. And I got the call, 327, go to Avivi Cavan's, fight in progress. And I thought, oh, God, oh man, I could do without this. But anyway, so off I walked down towards Avivi Cavan. And one of the things I'd learned was, if it's a fight, you walk, you don't run. because by the time you get there, if they've been fighting long enough, they'll be worn out, and it's easier to arrest
Good tactic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I walked my way down towards the VB commands. And as I approached about four doors away from where the fight was supposed to be taking place, I saw blood spots on the pavement, or sidewalk, as you would say, but pavement going into the cafe. And in the cafe was half the town's yobbos, the drunks. They were drying out after their afternoon session, waiting for that evening session. It was Christmas Eve. A lot of drinking, sense out, fighting. And you expected it. Christmas Eve, you expected fights.
Sure.
So I go into the cafe, and the spots of blood go to the back of the cafe. And I thought, what is it there? That's whoever's caused this trouble, or he's the injured boy. He's at the back. So I'll go back and there's blood pumping out of his left wrist. And it was terrible. I mean, and my first reaction wasn't to arrest him or to nick him. It was to treat him. And that's the way they taught you to do it. First of all, breathe in, get him okay before you do anything else. So I looked at him, and his guy called, you ain't going to believe this, because his name was Tex Wheeler. I met a British guy, Tex Wheeler.
Nice.
But everybody knew Tex Wheeler because he was a thug. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get trouble here. I know I'm going to get trouble. But anyway, I says to the shop, the manager of the cafe, give me the keys to your front door. He said, what for? I said, because I told you, give us the keys to your front door. And I could sense the aggravation in the cafe building up. And I knew I called for assistance, but I knew there weren't any coming. And I knew I was on my own.
Mm.
So I dragged Wheeler out of the shop, out of the cafe, and about 3 or 4 of them came out with him. And the 3 or 4 was they were the town thugs, and I knew that. So I was me against 4 or 5 of them, and I thought, oh dear, I could do without this. Go down, waiting for the ambulance to come, because I'd already called for an ambulance. And the lady from the hairdressers, which is where the fight took place, approaches us. And I knew her, very nice lady, normally, but not quite normal today. And she took one look at Wheeler. She said, you are. And she takes off her heels, and she went, whop, straight over his head. And instead of blood pumping out of his arms, it was now pumping out of his arms and his head. And he got angry and mad. And the three people with him started, and they went inside this hairdressers, and they smashed the place up. And I'm fighting with them. There's these ladies with all these big hairdressing dryers, and they got their curlers in. They took them all off, and they helped me. And the women in the shop and myself, we suppressed the 4 yobbos. And mind you, by the time the ambulance did get there, and I'm not exaggerating now, we had 16 people to get in those ambulances that were covered in blood. And
Wow.
And it was a mess. It's no good having, you've just got to deal with it. So and I managed to get a lift up the hospital, because in those days I didn't even drive. So I get up the hospital, and they start to get up there. And the ladies again helped me out again. And these ladies, they weren't going to stand no messing. They'd had their Christmas spoiled. Their hair wasn't going to be done for Christmas, and they were going to give up. So anyway, I managed to sort it all out, and it's about 6 o'clock now, and it's dark. So I got a lift to my home address, because I was covered head to foot in blood. I mean, just blood everywhere. And I knocked the back door, because I tried to get in. First of all, I couldn't get in, and my wife was ironing at the back door, and she opens the door. She takes one look at me, and she faints.
Oh no!
Oh, God, on there, for Christ's sake! Anyway, I got around, and I said, none of it's mine. All this blood, none of it's mine. Look, I got no cuts, no bruises. And she said, what have you been doing? I said, I ain't been doing anything other than trying to prevent a breach of the peace. She said, well, if you prevented a breach of the peace, God knows what it's going to be like when it's peaceful. She said, look at the mess of you. I said, so anyway, I went back to work. I went back to work for a simple life, to be honest. And I got there, and then eventually I did prosecute them, and they got nicked and made up. They went to jail. Just a small sentence, but they go to jail. But then the chief inspector sent for me, and he called me a coward. I said, a what?
Really?
You're calling me a coward? And he said, yeah. He said, you should have arrested him. I said, 4? Me against 4? One guy's got a conviction for attempt murder of a police officer. I said, I want to deal with some kids here, sir. These were nasty, horrible people. And he said, well, we pay you to arrest him. I was so mad.
I bet.
I can't tell you how mad I was. And I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you what, sir, you can keep this job. If this is the way I said, I'll call for assistance. And I know, I didn't know it at the time, but I know there was a do-on in the police club. And in reality, you should have cleared that police club out to come and give me some help. I was in trouble, real trouble. And if somebody calls for assistance, you don't care where you are, on or off duty, you go and you help. I said, I was on my own, so don't you dare call me a coward. I said, here, and I took my pocketbook with me. They call them your appointments. Put my peg down, put my pocketbook down, and I said, I put my warrant card. I said, there you can have them. I'm off out. And I went and left her, and I got out and I said to myself, I said, well, that's the only Christmas I'm going to be a police officer. I said, because I've just put my ticket in. She said, what have you done now? I said, well, I ain't going to have that. I could call me a coward. I said, no, I ain't going to have it. And then there was a knock at the door, and it was a chief inspector. And he said, I'm ever so sorry. He said, I found out what the truth was, and you should have had some help. He said, and I appreciate, he said, I didn't like your attitude. I said, I wasn't too keen on yours, sir. And he said, now, let's call it quits. Here's your appointment. Get back to work. So that was the first arrest.
Good on him. At least he apologized. He came back.
Yeah. Well,
lost a cop.
I was shocked he was apologized. He was a real gentleman. The chief inspector. Really, I got to like him. His brother was in the job, and a couple of years later, I was in a road accident, and he turns up to the road accident in the school bus, on duty, full uniform. I said, what are you doing driving the school bus? He said, you got to make your money somehow, son. I said, okay. But that was his brother. The chief inspector was a decent guy, really good guy.
That's funny.
Yeah, we got on. It was good.
Bob, can you remember like your strangest or most bizarre thing you dealt with?
That is really, really a difficult question for me because there's been so many. But I thought about it, and I think that it was the time that I was my very first hostage negotiation. And I did it. I was trained by Scotland Yard, but I got out there. And they do treat, it's a very, very intense course, and they do train you very well. But they didn't train me for this. It was in the middle of Birmingham, and about 4 or 5 stories up, there was a guy, and he was deaf, and he was dumb. And it's very difficult to negotiate with somebody. You can't hear what you say, and you can't understand what they're trying to get at. And we got up on the scaffolding, and he started throwing house bricks at us and scaffolding tips. And it was really, really a very, very tricky situation. And what I didn't know was all the time it was on TV, it was live TV, because the local television cameras had seen it. And there I was on live TV trying to negotiate, trying to get talking to this guy who was deaf and dumb. They didn't know he was deaf and dumb. And they kept thinking, I know, because I spoke to one or two after, they said, we couldn't understand why you wouldn't go and try and talk him down. Well, the reason was because he couldn't talk back. But I was with a guy called Dave Unwin, and Dave Unwin says, we use the cigarette, well, I could say the fag trick, but I got to be careful because I'm in America, the cigarette trick.
Yep.
Well, we use the cigarette trick. And of course, it was my first interview, my first house. The cigarette, they didn't teach us a cigarette trick. What's the cigarette trick? He said, we offer him a cigarette, and when he takes it, we offer him a light, and we let him have a smoke. I thought, that sounds all right. He said, and 20 minutes later, he'll want another cigarette, and we'll give him another cigarette, and when he takes the second, he'll have a little bit of trust in us, he says. So when we go to light it the second time, we grab him and suppress him.
And this guy's out on scaffolding?
He's on 5 stories up. He's 5 stories up on scaffolding,
gosh.
and scaffolding planks. And so we got to him, and it took a bit of time for the first cigarette. But the second cigarette, he was all for it. He wanted a light straight away. And Dave Unwin, who was the lead negotiator, grabs him. And when he grabbed him, the guy seemed to have a second strength, and he was getting the better of Dave. And I'm trying to get to Dave, and the two of us are there. But we've got to be careful because we're going to go over go down 5 stories if we ain't
That's
careful.
brave, man. Oh,
So, well, it wasn't brave. It was a necessity. I mean, it was the only way we were going to live. Otherwise, he was really. I think that's something with mentally ill people. They seem to get a second strength. Anyway, I said to Dave Unwin, get out the way. And he said, well, I said, just get out the way. And he got out the way, and I went, bang, and I hit him straight under the jaw and knocked him straight out. He was just out like a light.
Whew.
And they carried him down. The cops of the uniform branch came, took hold of him, carried him down, and took him into the cells. And I was in the canteen later on having a bit of breakfast or whatever. Might have been a bit of lunch, I don't know. But one of the cops who carried him down, he said, that was a hell of a punch, sir. I said, it came from being frightened. He said, well, let me just tell you, sir, when we picked him up, we thought you killed him.
Oops.
I said, don't say that. He said, we did. We couldn't find a pulse. I said, well, I got news for you. I said, I never even thought about it. He just had to have whatever came. He needed to have to suppress him and get it in. Now, the thing about the story is they took him up to the hospital to get treated. He escaped from the hospital.
Oh, man.
And to this day, nobody knows who he was. Don't know his name.
Really? Jeez.
Don't know his name, address, anything. Nobody knows. The hospital didn't know because he was deaf and dumb. And they didn't get the interpreter up to him. And he escaped from the hospital and away he went. So that's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
bizarre?
really bizarre. My goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's true, though.
That
When your adrenaline's going and you hit somebody, you are going to hit a lot harder than you even intend to.
I know. And I did it again. And if you've done it more than once or twice, you start to question yourself and say, are you doing this right? Because all the training you get, you ain't supposed to be hitting people unless it's necessary. I got it again. I was a resident beat officer. I was going on my holidays the next day, and I got my own police station. I was only got 2-year service, and a woman come banging on the door, and I said to my wife, I said, don't answer it. There's a big sign on the door which says, if this police station is unmanned, call the main station. And there's a phone there for them to call it. And no, she came in the back kitchen into my house. I'm having my dinner. And it was 9 o'clock at night. And I'd been on duty since about 8 o'clock that morning. So I've been on duty all day. And this is the day before my holiday. And she says, you'll have to come down. You're the only one who can handle him. I said, what do you mean I'm the only one who can handle him? Call the police station, they can handle him. They're in any trouble. She says, come on, Bobby. She says, you know it, you can handle it. So I go down there. There's about 50, 60 people outside the house. It was a council house, low class house. And they're all out there, go on. And his father is behind the door with an axe in his hand. And he is smashing his way back into the house, kicking in, whatever. And I got up to the front door and I said, come on. I can't remember his name now, but call him John. Come on, John. Look at the neighbours all watching you. Let's go and sort this out. Come on, let's go inside. Let's get it sorted. I said, you know what, all these neighbours looking at you. But he turned around, he bang, and he punched me. And he punched me in my radio, my police radio. Didn't break the radio, but it hurt my pride a little bit. And he hit me straight in the chest. And I said, you shouldn't have done that. You really shouldn't have done it. You why not, copper? Why not? He was as drunk as a skunk. And I said, why not, copper? I said, I'll tell you why not. Bang, and I hit him. I said, 'cause that's what you get when you... I said, that's what you get. Anyway, I broke his jaw. And I also broke the knuckles in the hand. But, I never had my peg, my truncheon. I never had that with me because I was off duty. And I got my police uniform on, but it was like the clip-on tie and the motorcycle jacket. I never had a helmet on or anything. So,
what did you call it? A truncheon? Is that what you guys call your batons?
We call them pegs, yeah. That's some peg. The peg fitted down the trousers, down towards your knee. And that was the only weapon we had. And I'll tell you what, in 32 years, the only time I used it was to knock some tacks in the stairs when I was fitting some carpet. And I didn't want to use a hammer, so I used the peg. It's the only time, I think, in 32 years. I ain't saying I didn't use my fists a few times, but you don't get me wrong. I wasn't doing around hitting people. I didn't do that. It was always the last resort.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it has to be done.
Yeah, and next day, he turned up at my house with a bouquet of flowers for the missus. I'm really sorry, Mr. Lessemun. Mrs. Lessemun, there you are. And he gave her a bouquet of flowers. He said, sorry I spoke to you on this. I nearly told him, I said, but you ain't spoke my holidays. I'm still going. And I went on my holidays. Yeah. But that was another one. Sorry, go on. We could talk about it for now.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a great career, so this is an easy interview. So the next question usually is tell me about like your most intense or terrifying call, but also for you, since you're an investigator for murder and stuff, do you have an interesting murder investigation or maybe your first murder? Any direction you want to take it.
All right. I like to go first. I did the first negotiator. Let me do the first murder. And the first murder, straightforward job, really. Young lad, 18, 19 years of age, in a council house. And
what's a council house? Is that like low income housing?
Low income housing, yeah. That's right,
okay.
Low income housing, yeah. And a little semi-detached or duplex, you call them? Yeah, duplex. Yep. And the old lady, I think she was about 73, something like that, 73, 74. And she'd been hit with a grappling hook, those 3 hook things.
Yeah.
Well, we know she was hit at least 17 times with that.
Oh.
Because there were 51 marks over her body, all over her body, and bleeding, obviously. But when we found her nightdress was up, and she was naked from the waist down. And that was a bit of a shock for a 73-year-old and thinking, what have we got? We've got a sexual abuse case as well as murder. And I suspected that was the case. But the young Bobby who found her whispered in me, he said, you know who this is? I said, no, I don't know. He said, you nicked him for burglary 6 months ago, same house. I said, oh, yeah, didn't I? I remember that now, yeah. He said, well, this is his crime. And he only lives just around the corner. And if he hasn't done it, then you're going to be struggling to find out he did. And I said, but what's all this? It's his grandmother. What's all this naked from the waist down?
Mm.
And he said, I don't know about that, sir. He said, but that's my bet. So we go around and knock on the door. His mother's there. Mother answers the door. And is Keith in? She said, he's at work. And I thought, that's a bad sign. He's in work. You know, he murdered his mother, gone to work the next day. Now, that don't sound right. But, you know, sometimes it happens. Well, is he likely to be home for lunch? She said, oh, yeah, he'll be home for lunch. She said, I've done him a few sandwiches. He'll be here shortly. I said, oh, okay. So we went on. And about 5 minutes later, he walks through the door, calm as calm can be. And I was with a guy called Charlie Dickens now. Not the Charles Dickens, but Charlie Dickens, my detective inspector.
Yeah.
And he started questioning him. And he said, what were you wearing last night? And he said, oh, shirt, jeans, whatever. What are they? He said, they're upstairs. He said, oh, they're in the washing basket. Oh, okay. And what time did you get in? To his, you know, the usual questions that you ask a suspect. And Charlie looks at me and he nods as though go and have a look in the bedroom and you find those clothes. So I go up in the bedroom, they ain't there. And I start searching around and I found them behind the hot water tank. And they were bloody. Terrible. And we got him. We got him. I mean, as soon as we saw that, we knew we got it. And so we go down, puts it out in front of him. What's this? He said, oh, that's beer. Charlie said, well, I've had a few pints in my time. He said, but I've never been more captive. I spilt a bit. He said, not much, but I spilt enough to know that ain't beer.
Yeah.
He said, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it's beer. So we take him in and I start to interview him. And he told me that he did it because the grandmother called his girlfriend a slut and he wasn't having any of that. He said, so I wanted to teach her a lesson. And teach her a lesson he did. There's terrible, terrible injuries.
That's sick.
Well, so I'm there. It's confessed. I'm thinking, this job's a good one. This is easy. It's the first one I've had, and it's going to go nicely. And then I got a message from the chief superintendent who's on his way from police headquarters. And he said, do not interview him. Do not say a word to him. And I'll interview him when I get there. And Charlie said, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? I said, well, it is, Charlie. I said, because he's all ready for making a statement. Yeah. And he said, Bob, I know the chief superintendent. Let him have his day. Let him do what he's got to do. And so off Charlie goes back to the scene, leaving me in with this Keith West. And the chief superintendent's on his way. And he arrived shortly after. But before he arrived, I said to Keith, Keith, can you do me a favour? And he said, what's that? I said, I know you've told me all about it, but when the chief comes, can you pretend I haven't interviewed you? He said, what? I said, well, because they don't want me to interview you, you know. He said, because they don't. I said, the chief wants to interview you. He said, oh, okay. So the chief comes in. This is absolutely true story. Chief superintendent comes in. I starts to interview her. And he said, you've stolen that. You stole it from your granny, ain't you? You thief. You thieving. You've been stealing them again from your granny, ain't you? He said, no, I haven't. And he said, yes, you have. We're going to do an inventory of this house, and we're going to find out if you had anything at all, even if it's sixpence. I'm going to do you for murder and theft, because that's what the game is here, isn't it? He said, no, it ain't. So I looked at Keith, and I'm going, no, tell him now. Tell him. If we were going to tell him. Chief goes out the room, and I said to Keith, Keith, you've told me, tell him. He said, I ain't telling him. He said, the way he's treated me. He said, nah. He said, I ain't telling him.
You gave the guy
I
a
said,
layup he can't even execute.
I said, look, I said, it's ready. We're ready. I said, just tell him. Anyway, Booth came back in, and he never, ever was going to admit it to it. But I just said, tell him now. And he said, I told him the story. He said, he'll tell it. I said, well, he did say one or two things a bit dark about him, sir. If he'd have found it or interviewed him, I'd have been in trouble. And I mean, all I was trying to do was do my job. So anyway, we got him, and he puts his hands up. But he's still got it in his mind that thieving was the motive, and it wasn't. It was what he called his mother. But I was also interested in this liquid that was on the stomach of the granny. So we took it and analysed it. Sperm.
Oh my gosh.
And it masturbated over her body.
Sick.
And
Sick
I mean,
guy, huh? Wow.
Yeah. But now we've got DNA. It ain't a problem. You get DNA, link it up. But in those days, you have to tie up the spit, the spit. You secrete the same enzymes in your spit that you do in your sperm. And what you do is you take them to the forensic and they tie it up as a secretor and tie them up as that's it. And that's how they identified it in those days. Well, I did that. I went to the prison, took samples. He was cooperative, gave us all the samples. Whoops along to the old forensic science laboratory, gets to the science laboratory, and they come back and they say, no, non-secretor. I said, what do you mean, non-secretor? He said, they don't tie up.
Second person?
I said, yeah, well, then we had a call to say that somebody had been seen in the bedroom, and he was blonde hair. That guy hadn't got blonde hair. And I thought, oh dear, this is going really bad on us now. There's something wrong with this case. And you know what I found out with murder is it slots into place. Everything slots into place eventually, but this one wasn't. So Booth says to me, he says, Lessemun, go and get you up that jail again and do it properly this time. Boil it if you have to, because you have to boil it for 20 minutes. And I'll get it up to the forensic. Same again, non-secretor. And I'm saying, I can't believe this. And he said to me, if you make a mess of this, you could be going back into uniform. I said, no. Yeah, okay. And you're thinking, well, I'm only doing what they teach me to do. I'm only trying to do what the job tells me to do.
Did the kid deny it at all? Did you ask him, did you do that?
Oh, no. He was going to admit that. He was never in a month of Sundays would he have admitted masturbating over a body. But he had done that. So third time got to jail. And third time put it to the forensic, and the forensic people say, no. And then I started to think outside the box a little bit, and I said, wait a minute. Have you got his underpants? Because we took his underpants off him when we arrested him. They said, yeah. I said, well, have you examined that for sperm? They said, no, we use saliva. I said, well, we're going to change the game here. Test that sperm in his underpants. And I tested the sperm in the underpants and compared it to the sperm on her belly. Positive. And it turned out that he was a secretor in his sperm, but a non-secretor in his spit. And it's a rare occurrence, but it does happen. It happens not very regular, but regular enough to, and of course, the forensic didn't spot that, because scientists tend to go black and white. And sometimes you've got to think a bit outside the box. And we got it. And then the blonde hair guy, the so-called blonde hair guy in the bedroom, we went back to the house, and you could see there was a tree. And when the wind blew with the tree, the leaves, it did look as though there was somebody in the house, but there wasn't anybody in the house. There wasn't a second person.
Wow.
He pleaded guilty. And I don't think the barrister brought up that seaman. I don't think he did. I think he just pleaded guilty on the basis that it was a murder and he killed her. And the interesting thing as well was, although he hit her 17 times with a cracker knock, the cause of death was strangulation.
Oh, wow.
She finished her off strangling her, yeah. That's the way it was.
That's good. Yeah. And at the time in England, how much time would you get for that? Life in prison?
Yeah. Well, there's only one sentence for murder. Death. Life in prison.
Okay.
But life in prison is a joke. I'm sorry, I don't like to say that, but it's a joke because I think he did 7 or 8 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it sounds like America.
And he was out again. He was out again and public king or somebody else. Anyway, I don't know, but I never come back.
That is a crazy investigation. Very cool. Not the crime wasn't very cool, but it was a fascinating story. Very. Now I know for a fact, Bob, someone told me you've been arrested 3 times. I want to hear about that.
Well, you don't know what the 3 times are, but I am. I'm going to go. I've got to go for the last one fairly quickly because it's to do with Guantanamo Bay, and I'm not allowed to talk about that too much. But I am going to tell you about being arrested. That'll be my 3rd arrest. My first arrest was for bigamy. They arrested me for bigamy, and that was during the Black Panther inquiry. And I was on the regional crime.
Was this in England?
Yeah, they arrested me for bigamy. And what it was, we got a real bigamist, and the real bigamist was a serial bigamist. I think he married 4 or 5 women, and he was using them then to do credit card fraud or whatever. But they were usually young girls. That was his MO. And yeah, he was, and what happened was, well, you get this when you have a major murder, like we had with the Leslie Whittle kidnapping, they put people in as suspects, not because they're suspects, but because they want them found. A couple of the women who'd been done for bigamy put in as a likely suspect.
And bigamy isn't that just marrying 2 people? Is that what that is?
Marrying people twice, yeah. Carries 7 years, or up to 7 years.
Wow.
But anyway, I said to my mate, I said, is sex rules his brain, and that's how we're going to catch this kid. We ain't going to catch him. He's pretty fly. We're going to catch him. His latest girlfriend, I got her. She's in custody in the field house with Mardo Mickelent. And she's only 16, but he'll be there. Sooner or later, he's going to go there and he's going to try and get her to escape, and then he'll go. Because field house isn't very, very secure. And it was up this long, I remember this long unmade road, and we get up this road, and we're in the Crab's Club car, and along he comes in his roper, good as gold. There he is in his roper, and it just sort of pulls out, so he's either got a T-bone me or stop, so he stops, so gets him out, and you're saying so? No, I ain't. Yes, you are. Right, quick, bit of a pantomime. He admits who he is. So I said to Ivor, he ain't the Black Panther. He ain't the guy we want, but we're going to have to deal with him now because he's wanted 5 times for bigamy. I said, stick him in the back of the crime car, Ivor, and I'll bring his car in. And we'll drive straight back to Dudley Police Station. We won't bother to go to the local police station because you got to do that. Got to go through the books, and then you got to arrange an escort. We'll just take him straight to Dudley. That's where he's wanted, and that's where he's got to finish up. So that's what we're going to make it.
Bob, one clarifier.
Yeah.
Black Panthers, is that the same as the Black Panthers in the U.S., like the Black Militant group, or this is different?
No. Black Panther was a serial killer killing post office masters, and he also did a very nasty kidnap of Leslie Whittle. And I think he's dead now. I'm pretty sure he's dead now. He should be. But it was a major inquiry. I mean, at one stage, I think there was 500 detectives working on the case.
Wow.
That's how it was a big case in the UK. So Ivor, my mate, is going to take him back to Dudley, and then I'm going to drive the car back to Rover. So I get in the Rover, have a little mooch around, see what's there, see what evidence you can find. And I'm sitting there, and this police panda car comes along. And he said, hello, sir. I said, he said, this car is circulated as wanted. I said, I know. We just arrested the guy who's in it. He said, well, who are you? I said, I'm Bob Lessemun, Detective Sergeant, on the Regional Crime Squad. I said, and he said, well, in that case, sir, could you produce your warrant card? I said, well, I would be able to. I said, but it's in my jacket. It's in the crime car. He said, what crime car? I said, the one you must have passed it. You must have passed it on the way up here. I said, oh, that green Dolomite. I said, yeah. He said, oh. He said, we thought about stopping that one there. He said, who's driving that then? I said, it's Ivor Minton, my striker, my mate. And he said, okay. I said, have you got the keys to the car? I said, yeah. He said, so this car circulated. You got the keys. You can't prove who you are.
Not looking good, Bob.
You're under arrest. I said, nah. I said, I used to work this area. I used to work around here. They know, everybody knows me. I said, you must be pretty new here because most people know me. He said, we don't know you, sir.
Oh, no.
Puts me in the back of this minivan and drives me to Hagley Police Station, which is the local station. Gets to the Hagley Police Station, and in it is Sergeant Smith. Phil Smith wanted me to be his next door neighbour and work the adjoining beat as a resident beat officer. So he knew me. So I'm thinking, I'm okay. So he goes in and the Sarge says, I don't know who he is. I said, come on, Phil. You know who I am. You know what it's about. He said, I've never seen him before in my life. He said, take him to Kidderminster, teach him a lesson. And these two bobbies were going to take me to Kidderminster. And I said, no, don't. I said, and then his missus came in. He said, how's it going, Bob? I said, yeah, she knows me. Who am I, love? She says, you're Detective Sergeant Bob Lessemun, not the Regional Crime Squad. I said to Phil, I said, what was all that about, Phil? You knew who I was or whatever. He said, teach her a bloody lesson. You sure come and told us you were on our patch and you were working our patch and you never said a word to anybody. I thought I'd teach you a lesson. So I got the arrest.
Oh, it's the same over here. You go to somebody else's jurisdiction and screw around, they get mad.
I know. It's the same, yeah. But the second one was in Italy. And the reason I call my books Plod had to do with this case that I was in Italy for. And I'll tell you very quickly what the Plod business was. It was a guy called O'Nions. And this O'Nions was the European manager for a major corporation. And he'd been stealing and thieving and doing fraudulent stuff. And we found about $1 million worth of gear in this warehouse. And it was down to him. And he wouldn't have it. And I said, come on, Onions. I said, you got to look at the evidence. It's overwhelming. You rent in the warehouse. It's full of stolen stuff. The stolen stuff from where you work. I said, it's down to you. You can't, not me. You're going to have to prove it. And he said, and I'll tell you what, Plod, I don't think you'll ever understand it. I said, Plod? He said, yeah, Plod, I don't think you'll ever understand it. Oh, so mad, going called Plod.
What does that mean, Plod?
It's a derogatory term for a cop. It means some really cop that's a bit dumb, what is a bit slow. And I've been called a lot of things as a cop, but Plod I didn't like. I did not like it at all. And I said, what's with this Plod? He said, will you keep calling me Onions? I said, well, that's your name. He said, no, it's O'Nions. O'Nions. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. O'Nions. I don't plant O'Nions in my garden. I plant onions. And they grow into nice big onions. I said, so don't you call me blood. He said, you won't understand it. You would. Anyway, I did understand it, but it took me nearly 12 months to understand. And I went to Italy, Holland, Denmark. I nearly went to Greenland. Not for a bid. I wasn't going to bid for it. But Denmark owns Greenland, and so kept the chief financial officer was going to take me there, but my inspector wouldn't let me go. But I put it all together, and I got him 4 years. I got Mr. O'Nien's 4 years. And when they found him guilty, and he turned down the steps to go down the steps into the cells, I made sure that the first person he saw was me. And as he looked at me, I just give him a little wink. Okay.
How's it going, onions?
And I went down to see him in the cells. He said, Bob, he said, I'm never going to call you blood again, ever. He said, the biggest mistake I made in my life is calling you blood. He says, because I saw your face when I called you blood, and I realized you were never going to let go. And I never did. So
that's great.
That's just so. Oh, how did I get arrested? I got arrested in Italy because we went to court, and we went to do a deposition at court, and I took some photographs, and taking photographs of public buildings in Italy is against the law.
Really?
And oh yeah, and I did not know this. I had no idea, and we had no Italians with us because we were in court, and they didn't think they needed any escort. So I was with Ivor again, my mate Ivor, and we were walking down the road just outside the main courthouse in Turin, and I said, "Don't look round, Bob, but there's two Starskys, because they look a lot more like Starsky than Nutch." And he said, "But they're carrying machine guns." And he said, "And they're just about to approach us. What do we do?" I said, "Ivor, we just stick our hands in the air and get arrested, because we ain't going to argue with them. We ain't going to say anything. And by the time when we get in the police station and they search us, they'll find that we've got permission to be here, country clearance, everything that needs to be done." I said, "So that's what." So they did. They arrested us, stuck the gun in their backs, hands in the air, took us in. But they were as good as gold when they found out who we were. But I was arrested. The third one, I've never told this story publicly because it is still current, and it's a current job. So I've got to be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I was in the Middle East, and the Middle East are not used to having defense investigators, and we'd done some work with the military commission case. I can't tell you what we were doing, but we were doing some work, and we finished. And we finished and we were coming out, and stayed in one of those beautiful hotels in the UAE. And as we got back, it was about 11:45. There was 14, I counted them, Arabs, dressed all in Arab garb, nothing, no police, no sign, nothing. And they came into the elevator with us. I was with the interpreter. And the interpreter says, "Stands up time, stands up time." And we thought it was a joke to start with. But then when it stopped at our floor and they all got out, we realized that they were for real. And they searched our room. They arrested me. They arrested my interpreter. They took, at 4:00 in the morning, they took us out into the desert. And I didn't know who they were. I didn't know whether they were cops, goodies or baddies, whether they were Al Qaeda. I just didn't know. I didn't know. And then we were in a sandstorm, 60 mile an hour. And I kept saying to him, "Ease up, just ease up. Look at the." I thought we were going to die from the way they were driving these black SUVs. And I thought, well, we're going into a compound somewhere. we finished up in a barracks. And I was so pleased to get to these barracks because when we got there, I saw the guard stick his salute the car. And I thought, oh, they're cops. That's good. They're cops. If they'd have been okay, they would have been dead.
Oh, yeah.
So they're cops. We're good. And they locked us up, though. They locked me up. And they charged me with spying. They absolutely charged me with spying. And we were in custody.
You must have been freaking out for, getting arrested as a spy in the Middle East.
Well, yes. And having no help either. And that was the biggie. There was nobody, you start to say things like, can I see a lawyer, please? They just laugh.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, then you say, can I contact the embassy? No. Can I contact my wife? Just put a mind arrest? No. And they lock you up and they put there's videos in the cells. But I snuck out. They never locked the door. I couldn't believe they forgot to lock the door because they did lock it to start with. And it was a proper cell, but they hadn't locked the door. So I snuck out and I found the boss. I found the boss of the, as it turns out, who they were. And I can't tell you who they were, but they were law enforcement type people. And I said to the boss, I said, look, we got country clearance. We're here with diplomatic passports. You really got to let us go because you ain't got no evidence of me spying because I ain't a spy. I'm an investigator. That's what I do. Anyway, charged me, went before the court, and we were hotels. We were kept in this hotel for 7 days where we couldn't leave the country. We couldn't do anything. They had our passports. And then we went to court and the judge totally exonerated us. Absolutely. Totally.
Oh, thank goodness. Huh?
And but then we get to the airport. When we get to the airport, we're in the line to go, and I heard him say a name, and he said, "Oh, it's Robert Conway." And as soon as he said Robert Conway, I just knew it was something to do with what we'd been arrested for, because that's my middle name. Not Lessemun's my name, but my name. They put me down as Robert Conway, and I wasn't going to tell them anything different.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, they tried to get us to sign a confession. They wrote this confession out. It was all in Arabic. I said, I didn't sign anything. And he said, I think you will. I said, I don't think so. I'm signing nothing. And they made us get all the documents translated into English, into Arabic. We had to pay for that. My missus had to send me the money. And I was hoping that the American embassy would pay, but they weren't interested. They did not want to upset them under any circumstances. But, yeah. And that long and short, about 3 weeks after I got back, I got an extra $3,000 in my pay packet. And I said, what's this for? I thought, I'm going to tell them, because if they've overpaid me, I don't want to be finding $3,000 later on.
They'll dock you later.
And they said, that's for all the aggravation that you had in the UAE. And that's a bonus. I said, well, you tell me that I'll get arrested every day. $3,000 a day. Yeah, but that's that's the story of the 3 arrests.
That's wild, brother. I would have been absolutely filling my underpants. I would have been so scared.
No, you and me both.
Oh,
I hate Snape. But one of the biggest compliments I've ever been paid was by the linguist. And he said to the debrief people, he said, I don't ever want to go through that again. I don't ever want to go. But if I do, I want Bob Lessemun with me. Because nice. I found him. When I escaped, I didn't escape. I just went around the corner and found him. And he wasn't even in a cell, he wasn't. He was in a chair in the cell passage. When I got to him and I said, whatever you do, whatever you say, do not sign any confessions and do not make any confessions, because they made it up. whatever he's written on that paper he's made up because I hadn't confessed to anything. Anyway, in the end, I got him to read out what he'd said. And it was just nonsense. It was just nonsense. And I thought, well, I'm glad I didn't sign with it.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of people are frightened enough to just do whatever they say, and then you find yourself in hard labor for 30 years or executed.
Well, I was told that the last investigator that was detained by UAE got 2 years in jail. So I was lucky. All I got was 24 hours plus a week in a motel.
Damn. Damn, brother.
Plus 3 grand.
Right. You got something better than a sharp stick in the eye, right? Bob, do you have a positive encounter you can remember? Heartwarming.
I thought about the answer to this, and I think what I'd like to say is the thing that really, really gave me the most pleasure and heartwarming. I could talk about cases that I dealt with where the people were so happy that we captured them and whatever. But the biggest long-term warm and fuzzy feeling I've got is from starting interview development training. When I went into the police force, nobody taught you how to interview. Nobody told you how to speak to a suspect or to witness. And you just picked it up as you went along. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you've been a cop. You know that the vast majority of your job is talking to people, is being able to talk to people and being accepted and building rapport with people. And I felt it was really, really important that we bring along the interview development training. And I went with a guy called Peter Marshall. Peter Marshall was from Ulster University. And during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, he taught the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, how to interrogate, how to interview in the detention centres and whatever. And I talked my bosses, Lord Deer actually, Lord Deer, who was probably the most famous cop in England, overnight said, yes, we'll do it. Go and do it, Lessemun. And I went to Northern Ireland. I didn't do any interrogation. I just learned how to interrogate. And I stayed with the professor he was from Ulster University, and he taught me, and we put together a week's course on interview technique. And we taught every police officer, every detective to start with.
That's great.
And then now every police officer gets to learn how to talk to people and how to interview people. And they named the interrogation training center after me, which I thought was pretty warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, that's very warm. That's very cool, man.
Yeah.
What is it called? The Lessemun Training Center or Robert Lessemun? What is it?
I think it's probably the Lessemun. I've never been to look, but I think it's the Lessemun Suite, they call it. And in the Lessemun Suite, what we do is we have everything under cameras. Everything's linked up to machines, and we watch people training, and we brief people on how to interview, and then we play it back to them. And it was a full house done out in video rooms.
That's cool.
Yeah, and what's even cooler? So when we started to do it, the chief said, "Go and do it." So we did, and then when we got to actually put it all together, the deputy chief says to me, "We'd really, really love to do it, Bob, but we ain't got any money." And I said,
always a story, right?
I said, "Yeah." I said, "You had me go to Ireland. You had me to go to Ireland. Put it all together." I spent weeks and weeks putting this course together. So it was a full week's course.
Oh my God.
And I said, "No, you're telling me so we ain't got any money?" He said, "Well, we have if you can find some." So I read it to the accountant, and he said, "There ain't any money. It's all allocated." I said, "Well, that's what I thought." He said, "Well, we could take a little bit out of the public order training and put that into your training."
Now we're talking.
I said, "No, don't tell me. Tell the deputy, because I ain't going to be in a position to change any money anywhere." And he said, "Yeah, okay." So that's how we got it. We stole the money out of the public order training budget.
That's
the truth.
great. Yeah, at least you got it done, man. That's awesome. Bob, I've so enjoyed this interview. It's been fascinating. If you're up to it, I'd love to have you on again. We've gone about an hour. I have one more question for you, then I want to talk about your books a little bit. What advice would you give to a young person getting into law enforcement now?
I would give him the same advice as was given to me. The first 3 words of the police training manual in the UK is to be firm, to be fair, and to be friendly. And a lot of cops always remember the firm. Some of them remember the firm and fair, but a lot of them forget the friendly. And you get more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
Absolutely. Wise advice. Tell us about the Plod series, my man. It looks like you've written, how many of them have you written now? I got 3 up on the screen.
4 I've written. I've written 4. The first one to the right is a young Plod. And the picture of the cop in snow, that's got its own story in itself, which I haven't got time to tell you today, but that's a story. You can ask me about that and I'll tell you why it's
okay.
It is who he is. So the first was the young Plod, me as a young Bobby, and there's about 20 stories there. I told the story about the Christmas Eve. That's in that, that's one of the chapters, but there's a lot of other chapters in there, and they're all little incidents that I encountered as a young Bobby. And I really, that was the first book I wrote, and it's the one I enjoy most because I've never written a book in my life, and I don't regard myself as a literary guy. I'm more of a storyteller, and I tell a lot of my favorite stories in that. But then you look at Plod Police in Paradise, and arriving at Turks and Caicos and having somebody say to you, you're either a born adventurer or stark raving mad. And you keep thinking for the rest of the journey, well, I ain't a born adventurer. Anyway, I wasn't, but it would seem that I am when you read this book, because in the 2 years I was there, there's again some fabulous stories, but it's again in the Turks and Caicos Islands. There's a big drug bust in there. There's human trafficking, money laundering, burials at sea. You gotta hear those. Like, call me back and I'll tell you the burials at sea stories. They're really, really touching. And I nearly answered that as, what is the most touching thing that you dealt with? It was a burial at sea for a guy, which was amazing. But that's only one of 20 stories. There's 25 stories, I think. That's me in the thing. And then when I finished in the Turks and Caicos, I found my wife, who was an American, and that's when I moved to America, and I'll go private. I became a private investigator. And that's what I do. I'm a private investigator, or I was a private investigator, doing mainly defense work. Not through choice. I'd rather prosecute than defend, but they won't be giving me a prosecution job. I went to Guantanamo, not Guantanamo, Quantico, and I was going to teach at Quantico, but they didn't want to do tape recorders or video recorders in those days. I don't think they got much choice these days, but in those days they didn't. So I became a private investigator. Again, some great stories. Absolutely great stories. And if you haven't read the book, you want to read them. They're really, as a cop, if you're a cop, you will enjoy it. In fact, one or two cops have said to me, you changed the names, but we know who they are. We know. And I'm thinking, I didn't make it a big secret. But anyway, there we are. Yeah.
I love it, man. And yeah, I mean, I would love to have you back. I'd love to have a whole nother episode just diving into the Caribbean stuff and the private investigator stuff. Any stories you have, if you're a willing participant in that.
Yeah, I'll do it. I mean, there's so many. There's so many stories. That's the problem. And it started with a Home Office pathologist, and she was dying of cancer, and she said to me, entertain me, send me some stories. She knew she was dying. And I started writing. I found I've written about 100 stories before I knew where I was. And she's dead now, but she was always grateful for the stories that we gave.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really, that's beautiful, actually, sending her the stories. Now they're out there. Thank you so much for coming on, Bob. It was an honor to have you. Your stories were so fascinating to me. And I think the American listener over here is going to be fascinated by hearing the stories from policing England and all that stuff.
I hope so. Thanks. Yeah. And thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And you can get Bob's book through the Amazon link in the show notes. Go pick up a copy, give it a read. And Bob, I'm going to do the outro for the show. Can you hang on for just like 2 minutes?
Okay.
All right. The great Bob Lessemun. Oh my goodness. Fun stories. So happy to have him on. And I can't wait to have him back because I want to hear about the Caribbean. Absolutely. This is a time in the show where I thank the Patreon sponsors. These are the people that have listened to the show, listened to all the free episodes, and decided I want to give old Gingy some support, and I truly appreciate it. If you pick sergeant level or above, you will get a shout out on the show. Starting with the lieutenants, who I'm talking about is the great and powerful Andy Biggs, the handsome and venerable Kyle Roberts. Thank you. Brad Thompson from Big Bear Investigations. Brad, thank you, sir. Check him out. Michael Roach from Roach Machines AI Solutions. Check him out. The handsome, now to the sergeants, the handsome Lane Campbell, the great Gary Steiner. Adam Mihal, thank you, sir. The great Seth Wright. Lauren Stimson, thank you, madame. The great Jason Lau. Sasha McNabb, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Clifford, thank you, sir. The great Tammy Walsh, holding it down at dispatch. Thank you, Tammy. George Tessier, love you, buddy. See you at church. Thank you. The great Dennis Carrasquillo. Thank you, sir. Scott Young, everybody. The great Scott Young. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, amazing woodworker. Check him out on Instagram. Doug and Kelly Newman, I love you guys. Hope you're doing well. The great Raymond Arsenal. Thank you, Ray. Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, my brother. Stay safe out there, my man. The great Elliot Sykes. Clark LaCuff, my man. Thank you. Adam McMahon. Thank you, sir. Sheriff Ronald Long. Thank you. The great Zachary Bleed, the great Jason Labrie, everybody. Thank you, Jason. Lisa Gano, thank you, madam. Truly appreciate you. Sherry Finch, my goodness, I appreciate you, Sherry. Eric Smith, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Jackson Dalton from Black Box Safety, check them out. Thank you, Jackson. The great Brett Lee, everybody. Alex Wasik, you gotta be kidding me. Thank you, sir. And the great Lauren Smith. Thank you. Woo, the list is getting long, guys, and I like that. Thank you so much for all the support, and I love you, and I'll see you next week.